In every era, there is a need, a spark, an instinct that brings us together to imagine and to innovate. This hasn't changed. What's possible has. We create technology that makes our world better. Ideas that move us, empower, and connect us. But great ideas cannot thrive alone. They need to be shared, challenged, refined. Through our insight and collective curiosity, we advance and grow. New solutions, new directions, new answers. We do that here, together. This is the age of connected intelligence. Welcome to the IQ era.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of MWC. We've got a fantastic panel to kick us off this morning, talking about what is the X factor in the next reality. So I'm really excited to introduce our fantastic panel. Lovely. Welcome, everyone. So we're just going to do some quick introductions, and then we'll get into the questions for our panel. So I'm Lisa Kelvey. I'm the Global Head of Infrastructure and Transportation at KPMG. I'm personally really excited by this topic because the potential for the industries I work with is absolutely enormous. And we have a fantastic panel here with the real experts this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rafa Camargo. I work at Reality Labs at Meta, and I lead a lot of the engineering work to develop our wearable products.
Fantastic.
I'm Rob Morgan. I'm a storyteller and an experience designer. I wrote the first manual for storytelling in augmented reality. I started life at PlayStation, where I was a lead game writer, working on augmented reality and virtual reality games. And now I work across museums and games and theme parks, integrating augmented reality technology.
Fantastic.
My name is Ziad Asghar. I lead the XR, wearables, and personal AI business at Qualcomm. Really fortunate. I've worked a long time on the smartphone side, and now as we see the transition from smartphone into these wearable intelligence devices or personal AI devices, I'm glad to be working with many of our partners on these technologies as well. Super interesting times.
Lovely, thank you. So we've got, in safe hands this morning, we've got a fantastic panel for this topic. So we're going to kick off with a question about the current landscape for XR. It feels like we're at a real tipping point now. As you just said, moving from the smartphones into other devices, really quite exciting blend of human intelligence and then the extended reality. Let's start at this. And what excites you most about where we are in the next few months? What's coming up that's really exciting?
Yeah, bro, as you said, I think we're like at a very interesting point and an inflection point. If you look back at the history of personal computing, you know, we've been giving ourselves more flexibility, more economics, more mobility to it. Mobile has been a big leap forward on that. But the one thing we haven't been able to disconnect from is like we're tied to screens, you know. So you're either on the digital world or you're in the real world. I think with XR, that's what we are changing. Suddenly, digital and physical come together, which is a lot more natural for us. You cannot say like, oh, leave aside your digital world, leave aside your physical world. They really need to come together. So we are at the point where finally the technology is maturing on that. And we're not talking about like even next year, the following year. I'm wearing these glasses, and they already have AI that is contextual. You know, I have audio and all that. They're really augmenting my senses already, and I don't need to be basically heads down onto my screen to do a lot of things, as an example. So that's really the exciting part here. Is really the logical, natural evolution to what is basically personal computing.
Fantastic. Rob, I know that you're really passionate about the content and the experience. What's exciting you?
That's the thing. Like, as an artist and a content person, right now we're also going through this transition from pass-through virtual reality and pass-through mixed reality into proper see-through, which has been the dream for so long that people like me have been talking about it for well over a decade. And I think what's exciting for me is being able to put dimensions of adventure and gameplay into people's normal lives, into people's ordinary walk to the shops. Because I think it's telling that still the most popular and successful and recognizable augmented reality XR experience is Pokemon Go, not because it necessarily augments really sophisticated graphics into space, but because it adds this dimension of adventure and objective into people's lives. I'm really excited as we move away from pass-through and into see-through to be able to put experiences out onto the street that really add something to people's everyday and to create that kind of context of content in their lives.
Fantastic. And for you?
Look, I think this is an amazing time, right? Because, like I said in the beginning, now you're getting to these devices that, the way I like to put it is, these devices give you some sort of a superpower. It should allow you to do something that you cannot do today. It should allow you to be able to converse with a person that doesn't speak the language that you speak. It should allow a student to be able to understand where they're stuck on a homework. It should do something for you that a smartphone today cannot do. And by the way, these devices are doing exactly that. I mean, we have customers and we have partners who are basically using these AR-like devices to be able to actually, allow the people who may be visually impaired to be able to understand what's in front of them, right? These are amazing use cases that only a device like a smart glass or a device like a VR device can enable that a smartphone cannot do today. And the second part I would say that's really exciting is this inclusion and the merging of XR and AI. I think it's solving some amazing problems for this space. I really think these two are super symbiotic, right? Think about MR. What's been the challenge? Creating content? Well, guess what? AI is awesome at creating content, right? This is solving that problem. We can do models like, text to 3D. We can do, Gaussian splats to be able to convert 2D to 3D. These are exactly the challenges that we have had. And then on the smart or glasses-like side, AI is the UI now that sits on this device. It's actually driving this amazing innovation into all these new form factors that are going to bring AI to the consumer while giving eyes and ears to AI. So super exciting times, whichever way we think about it, with AI plus XR.
Fantastic. And for me personally, my background is infrastructure and construction. So my whole life has been about taking 2D things and making them 3D in reality. And I can see enormous potential for these technologies in terms of how we do that much more effectively. I think picking up on some of those themes there, I know Meta talks a lot about super intelligence. Can you bring that to life a bit with some sort of real world case studies of what that means for you?
Yeah, I mean, Mark and Meta, we've been talking about superintelligence. It's a way to kind of like maybe express the AI in a more clear way to consumers. And what we mean by that is essentially is an AI that is contextual aware, that is always on with you, and then it anticipates your needs and react to those, basically, and proactively work on those versus just reactively working on those. You're seeing just the beginning of that at this point. That's starting right now, mostly reactive. You're still like querying it and all that, but very quickly you're going to start seeing things where it's like proactive and basically being one step ahead of you, always helping you because it really understands your environment. You were talking about like you cannot do that with your phone. Your phone is in your pocket. It doesn't know what's around you. Right. It doesn't understand what you need in this moment. You may get a message, but it may not be the right thing to bring it up to you right now because you're in a very important meeting, as an example, and so on. So all these things are going to change significantly the utility of the product. And it's not just for consumers. You can also look at enterprise. There are a lot of use cases that we're seeing emerging as well on this. For example, like there is a lot of field operators, that need a lot of skills to, like, is there a repair or an installation and all that? We're seeing those emerge. Suddenly, you cannot have like your top tier support everywhere. So there are two parts to that. Like one, you're like there dealing with something, you're hands-free, but AI is with you. They're seeing what you see, it can whisper to your ear. Yeah. It can guide you through that. With the AR display, it can also literally digitally guide you, overlaying a digital components to the physical things. And then even when the AI is not ready for that, you already are connected to maybe a tier 3 support that essentially now can scale because they can support in real time someone that is basically gone beyond the complexity of what they normally do in the field. Yeah. So that's one example. We're also seeing other examples, like, for example, in training. Basically, you're wearing this, you're training on a new activity and all that. The AI is really both guiding you, but also seeing what you're doing, where you're stumbling, where you're doing it well, and really coaching you through it. That will be another good example where you're going to see also an enterprise doing these things. Same thing you can translate to consumers. Yeah. So we're really, really excited about this. We're literally at the tipping point of this thing. And like, actually, the examples I just provided, they're real. They're happening today. And then you can imagine now extending this, especially as the AR displays come on to be more accessible on these products as well, which is really coming now together. We already launched last year our first display glasses in market that are truly wearable, very light, not like things you saw before that were, honestly, from a form factor, we're not there, even if the technology already provided some of those experiences, but the form factor is also fundamental. So you're also going to see that in the consumers. So we're really, really excited about it.
I know I can really see that, because I know in the sectors that I work in, one of the biggest challenges is time to competence. So typically, engineers, field staff, to be fully competent can take 7, 8 years, and actually if we can use this technology to really get that down, to enable them to do more and be supported, I think there's a huge productivity potential with that. Yeah. So coming on to you, Rob, in terms of the experience, I know you mentioned museums, education. Yeah. What do you think are the things that are exciting there?
I think that AI, as Ziad was saying, like AI is a force multiplier for what we were already trying to do on your smartphone in terms of encountering the real world. That's what's really exciting about it, being able to seamlessly give you like information that's fed into your field of view as you're encountering like real things rather than things just mediated through a screen. So from a game perspective, AI is not just improving the pipeline of being able to make stuff, but also it's unlocking the capability that's easy to imagine, but which has been so impractical for so long, of reskinning a real environment to make it look like a Victorian fantasy, or make it look like you're living in a Nintendo world. Like, that kind of game and ambient fictional experience is really exciting to me as a storyteller. But then if you think about a cultural experience like visiting a museum, we've been looking for an interface that allows you to kind of curate your journey around a museum for many, many years, and like apps can only get you partway there because ultimately you don't want to be looking down at a screen. You want to be out and in the environment. And so it's easy now to think about being able to curate something that is designed for you in terms of a route or even an explanation or a curation of a single artwork or artifact. But I also do want to I think we need to be conscious as developers and creators that ultimately going out in the real world is an encounter with the unexpected and the unusual and things that we weren't necessarily ready for. And that's a good thing because that helps us grow. I think that at times we've verged on kind of the danger of only seeing what we expect or what is being curated for us on the internet. And I think that causes people's minds to close somewhat. So I'm also very conscious that as we're creating these kinds of interfaces, it's really important that we maintain that encounter with the unexpected that the real world represents.
Yeah, and I think it's a really fascinating point, isn't it? And I certainly could do with the AI guidance for this event here. When it's something this enormous, finding your way around, you can see that being really powerful. So we'll come back to the topic of the unexpected and how do you sort of avoid getting into a bubble. But let's hear first, what are you excited about?
I think some of the points that Rafa mentioned, I think from the superintelligence perspective are very interesting. But maybe taking a step back, right? We've seen these evolutions, right? We had the PC and the computing stage, and we saw the evolution to mobile, and then we saw the evolution now to these new kinds of devices. And there's always been a new human-machine interface that's enabled it. So if you think about it, it was the mouse and the keyboard that enabled the PC. It was really the touch screen that enabled the mobile. But now, for these new devices that we wear around our body, like glasses or pendants or necklaces or what have you, the interface essentially is AI. So what we have done at Qualcomm is that we have actually added in a lot of the capability on our products. Last year at one of the conferences, I actually showed a small language model running just on the smart glass. So this is a scenario where, just like you have a ChatGPT session, but now you can have that session with your glass. And that information is not going to the cloud, it's not going to the phone. It's all being able to be done just on the glass. That's kind of the power of how much AI we have in these devices. But the really interesting thing about these devices is when you do this session on ChatGPT, let's say, or a different AI, you answer the question, or you ask a question, or your 10-year-old asks the question, you get back the same response. There is no personalization of that AI experience. I think what we envision is that with the fact that now there's a camera over here, and you can actually get that multimodal input, you can actually understand the context better. Now you start to personalize that AI experience. So it's not that generic answer that you give to everybody. Now you do an answer for Rafa, you do an answer for Rob, you do a different answer for me, depending on the history and depending on the context. And there's different context that these devices provide. The glass tells you what you're looking at. The smartwatch will tell you, for example, your heart rate. It will tell you your activity level. It tells you are you walking or you're running. Your phone tells you of your location to the nth degree. Just aggregate all of that and add that into your AI, and you have an experience that's far more curated and personalized than ever possible. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to, that I think we'll be able to bring in coming days with these devices.
Yeah, I can see that. And you mentioned in your introduction about the engineering of these things and the real challenge of getting wearables that are also things that people want to wear. They've got to fit with comfort and all of those things. They've got to fit with accessibility. They've got to fit with fashion and looks and the image you want to present to the world. What do you think is the biggest challenges in getting wearables that people really want to wear?
Lots of them. First, I think so far we found actually the glasses form factor is the most ubiquitous with regards to enabling these kind of experiences. It's a simple reason, literally the glasses are close to your senses, your more important senses, your vision, your hearing. They can talk to you, they can see the same thing that you see, they can hear what you're hearing in exactly the same egocentric way that you do it. There'll be other form factors that will emerge and all that. Ziad was mentioning a bunch of them right now. But this is the one we have invested the most because it's the most natural one. But it's also one of the most challenging one. First, our face is our identity. I don't know how many neurons in our brains are just dedicated to basically distinct people. I cannot remember people's names. I remember everyone's faces, isn't it? And nature really designed us for that. And which means it's very different than the current things that we see in consumer electronics or your personal computing. Even a smartphone, probably put it out here, we all have the same one or they all look the same. Suddenly, you want to choose style, and I cannot do like 3 styles for all the world. Like even the portfolio we have out today, and it's the beginning, we are like, I don't know, like over 50 different SKUs, and it feels short. So that's already a challenge. It's just a style so that you get acceptability because essentially you really, really want to personalize it. The second one is you were mentioning is ergonomics. It's essentially, if you want to wear this all day, so it's useful to you, it's always with you as an assistant, it really needs to feel light, and it needs to feel like you're wearing it all the time. So, and the third thing you were mentioning, at the same time, it needs to be very powerful from a compute perspective.
Indeed.
So it can really do this contextual understanding. It can be basically, even when we bring the AR displays, we have literally single-digit, count with one hand, milliseconds to do what we call photon to photon. So like we see what's going on in the world. I want to put something digital on top of the world, and I have 4 or 5 milliseconds to draw everything and place it there. Which means it needs to happen here. I don't even can go wireless somewhere else. I don't have that amount of time. So when you combine all these things, they're going to be fighting the ergonomics. You want long battery life. You want to use it every day. That creates weight. Batteries are not improving at Moore's law, or the way silicon is improving. Even silicon is not improving now fast enough for the amount of compute we want to put here. And so that's like a significant dimension just like on the device itself. And then we've been talking about the AI, and that's another challenge. AI needs to become truly multimodal. You mentioned a bit that before. It really needs to be models that are basically native, multimodal video, audio, speech, intonation. It's not like just what you're saying, how you're saying it, and all that. So it feels natural. It feels really contextual aware, including to your intonation, isn't it? And then the other part, it needs to be super trustable. We talked about that. And in addition, it needs to find the right balance. It's not a good assistant that is nagging on you because now it's capable on you all the time. Don't do this, don't go there, like do that. It really, that contextual awareness that we talked about needs to be very sophisticated. It needs to be at the right time that is interrupting you or proactively going to you, at the right time receiving and saying, like, I don't need to do anything for you right now. You're taking care of it. Those are the challenges, and they're going to be for quite a while. We're making a lot of progress in form factor. We already launched our second generation. It's much better. You'll see new generations from us launching in glasses, both styles and comfort. But the AI is probably the one that, well, it's evolving super fast because actually we're already doing things that we thought like we'll be doing 2 years from now, not today. So I do think that also is going to converge quickly. But all these things need to come together to have a mass adoption. And then the last piece is going to be essentially price, which I think as it grows, we have the economies of scale. So it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah. So coming to you, Robin, maybe this is a bit of an unfair question, but you've talked a lot about creativity, a lot about storytelling. I think we're quite fixed on things we know. We're fixed on watches, we're fixed on glasses.
Yeah.
Is there something else we need to be inventing for wearables?
I think it's worth talking now about interoperability because for good reason, it's kind of an old-fashioned buzzword, but the spatial internet, which I think is still a useful concept, that's not going to be built necessarily on TCP/IP and the same kind of inherently interoperable protocols that the original internet was built on, because it's being built out of proprietary hardware, it's being built out of proprietary data sets and 3D meshes of the world, and a lot of it is going to run on proprietary AIs that have been trained on proprietary data sets about the world. Like there's a data race on now to get that data to train those geospatial AIs to be really good at being able to interface with the world to be most useful to users. But equally, I think we do need to think about interoperability, because if you look at, again, kind of an old-fashioned buzzword in some ways, all of the metaverses that have been successful and been compelling for users, things like Roblox, things like Fortnite, places where people, particularly young users, choose to dwell and spend their time, those are built on platform-agnostic interoperability. And so I think when I think about the kind of creative experiences that I want to be building in the glasses, if I want to sell or I want to provide a partner the opportunity to sell a cool skin to somebody in augmented reality so they can walk down the street with golden flashes going off around them, or wearing like cool augmented reality Nikes over their real shoes, or be part of a game world in that way, you sell that kind of product, the user needs to know that a decent proportion of other people are going to see it. And so I think as we're developing these ecosystems, we also need to be thinking about the kinds of experiences that are going to run across hardware in these ecosystems, and developing towards that so that we can create experiences that are competitive and compelling for people, and that allow people to dwell within an augmented version of reality that isn't really kind of closed down and private and sort of encrypted.
Yeah, brilliant. So Ziad, for you, where are the biggest challenges with wearables, and maybe the biggest opportunities?
Yeah, I think Rafa covered very well on the device side. I'm going to go more to the actual silicon product in a way. And I think to think about it, one of the biggest challenges is power. The interesting part is if you really look at your mobile, your typical mobile has about a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. A typical smart glass has a 250 milliamp hour battery. That's 1/20th. But if you go and talk to the consumers, they want the same quality of the image. They want the same experience that they have on the smartphone on the glass. That's really the challenge. So that's really what we are very focused on at Qualcomm, of really taking and miniaturizing these such that you're actually able to give that same experience in a very small form factor at a fraction of the power consumption. Now, this is a very interesting problem. It's a very Qualcomm-sized problem because we've always lived on devices that are not plugged in. We've always lived on devices with very small batteries. So we are extending that learning, that pedigree further onto the side of being able to optimize the power consumption even more. We're taking a three-pronged approach. So at the chip level, what we do is, number one, we're going to move to a much more advanced transistor. As you go to more advanced transistor, better nodes, you're able to get some benefit from there. Number two, what we do is we take very unique architectures. So these architectures are different than what you would do on a mobile product or what you would do, for example, on a PC product. These architectures are where, for example, you do a lot of processing just on the chip. You don't move off to the memory that you have outside, because in terms of moving data, you lose a lot of the power consumption. And then the third aspect that we do really is being able to actually take each and every one of the functions, like the AI block inside, like the camera block inside, like the video block inside, the modem, connectivity. We basically reduce the power consumption of each of those. So we're taking that very meticulous approach to be able to actually reduce the power consumption for these products. That's one, I guess, big set of problems and challenges. I think the second one is really about experience. And you know, I feel this is what is absolutely critical. The power of having an amazing reasoning model where you can basically have a long task and you can actually break it down and the device basically does that task for you is amazing. But on the other hand, if your response that you give, your agent, the response that the agent gives is not right, people will not use that function again. So the bar is really, really very high to be able to have a pristine experience such that people start to rely on a device like this. Because otherwise they're like, you know, the experience wasn't what I wanted. In the same way, I mean, I was talking to some of the customers in China, and they were telling me that I want exactly the same camera quality that you have on the highest end smartphone. Well, the space is much more limited, but those are exactly the kind of challenges. We love these challenges, and that's what we're working on doing. So I think experience, and power. And I think those are the things that we need to solve as an industry to be able to give those right experiences to folks.
Yeah. And just, you know, open to any of you really who wants to come in on this point, what about the connectivity point? Because obviously the quantities of data that we're going to need to be transferring to and from the devices is going to be enormous. And, you know, frankly, last night in my hotel, I couldn't even get 5G to work. So how big a blocker is that?
I'd love to comment on that. I think, see, with this new paradigm shift that's happening with these personal AI devices, I like to call it that you need different roads. And these different roads are things like 6G. So like one of the interesting parts is, for example, if you're doing multimodal AI, you will need to take a picture and send that either to a device, do it on the device, in certain cases send to the cloud. Typically, the networks are designed such that you have very good downlink speed, but you don't have as good uplink speeds. So one of the great things that 6G is doing is actually they're going to augment the capability of having some degree of symmetry in downlink and uplink rates. I think that's going to start to solve a lot of challenges, number one. Number two, the bits per second per watt as to how much power you spend to be able to send down data or send it upwards is going to improve also with 6G. But the third thing is really to have this proper hybrid-like scenario where you do some processing on the glass, let's say, some processing on the phone, some processing in the cloud. It requires you to have this seamless connectivity. And that means that even if you are at the cell edge, you still want to have very good connectivity. It's not that you are in the center of the cell, you have great connectivity, you go a little bit further and you don't have that level. So those are exactly the challenges that 6G is going to be addressing. And I think we have done, of course, a lot of innovation also on the side of personal area networks like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to be able to optimize the power further. We need to do all of these things to really make these devices successful. So here at Mobile World Congress, we actually launched our new platform that we are calling basically the Snapdragon Wear Elite platform. And that platform basically has a hexa connectivity. Just to give you an idea, it has 5G RedCap, it has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth, it has GNSS capability, it has UWB, and it has non-terrestrial network satellite as well.
Okay.
Right? So again, you need hyper connectivity to really be able to give the full capability of these devices.
Yeah. And again, I can imagine that then conflicts with the weight and the wearability and the battery.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
Yeah,
it's a
really,
balance.
Really
Yes.
interesting.
The other thing that also we're going to need, which has been traditionally in wireless, you have a trade-off between bandwidth and latency.
Yes.
And these applications actually need both.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's another thing that 6G
True.
is going to bring, that is going to change quite a bit the experiences as well and help.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe staying with you, Ziad, if we zoomed ourselves forward a decade and we're sitting here in the 2030s, where do you think these products are going to get to? What will we be experiencing?
It's going to be an amazing time, I can tell you that much. But I think it's the way I envision it. There is no device that can do the immersive experience that a great MR device can do today. What I envision is that by that time frame, you will have that same amazing level of immersion in the device the size that I or Rafa or Rob are wearing. That's where the holy grail is, right? The holy grail of these devices is something that's just as impressive, just as immersive as an MR device, but it's as light as this glass. So really the target has to be less than 40, 50 grams, but still all of that immersion, fully contained device such that you go off on a hike, you go on a jog, you go on a bike ride, you're not connected to anything else, but directly connected to the cloud. You have that hyper connectivity now available to you. You have an agent that sits on that device, and like Rafa was saying, now you have that amazing latency. It's able to give back that response right away. See, humans are very impatient. If you ask a question and you don't get back that response within a second or barely 1.5 seconds, he's going to move on. We need that experience, that excellent sort of an experience, both from visuals, from intelligence perspective, and from context perspective. I don't want my AI to have to remind it every time. It should have that memory built into it to be able to remember that I asked him the last question about XYZ, and to be able to connect the dots from that question as to what I'm asking about now. I envision that kind of a device available and in our faces and in our bodies, maybe a pendant, maybe a necklace, or some kind of a device that people are actually able to use to have that amazing, pristine experience.
Fantastic. Rob, for you, where are we going to be?
I mean, that's where it gets really exciting, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where we can start talking about those kinds of ambient narrative or gameplay experiences that kind of remake or reskin your environment to be a fantasy environment or to be a gameplay environment or whatever kind of environment that the user wants to dwell in to share a game with their friends or to just make their walk to the shop a bit more interesting. It's also worth pointing out that, we're at a conference and we're surrounded by big, really, really high-def screens that are drawing a lot of power. And I think if we kind of transfer a lot of the display capabilities that we currently have to put into LEDs and put up on a wall with a large amount of power draw, if we transfer that into people's own vision onto a wearable in their own eyes, then suddenly we're able to think about reducing the power draw of things that we currently need in order to sell products or to communicate to people or communicate traffic signals. But I think that does also raise this question of what happens if we begin living in customized realities. Maybe we'll get onto this in a second, but it's worth thinking about whether we're all looking at the same billboard, which is currently a broadcast piece of media, and it's showing the same thing to everybody. I think if we take some of the power draw and we take some of the responsibility for curation of that onto the individual user's wearable, that's really exciting for the user because reality becomes more customizable and personalizable. But then, are we really even living in the same reality anymore? And that raises other really interesting questions about the usability of the real world and how this technology is going to affect that are too big to fully get into today. But yeah, it's an exciting time.
Okay, well, let's hear your vision for the future. I know you've talked a lot about a coach and a companion that's always with you. Is that the vision, or is there something else?
It's much more than that. I think as the technology converges, so we've been talking a bit like the things that need to get solved or improve on the technology to make this a true wearable that essentially is always on with you. I think there are 3 things that I'm excited about and I'm envisioning. You're talking 10 years from now. It may actually come sooner than that. And it's one, we're going to give you what we call superpowers. We're going to augment your senses. And I can talk in a bit about that's already happening in some cases. 2, you're going to have super memory because now your device is not in your pocket. It's with you all the time. It's basically going to help you remember everything. We'll have to adapt to it.
I'll be able to remember some names. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah. And then the third thing is every person in the world is going to have an amazing personal assistant. What some of us are lucky have maybe at work, and you cannot live without, or some people even can afford it in their personal life and all that, but most of us cannot. Now you're going to have it, and that could be contextual to you, if for everyone it's your personal assistant. It's always going to be, like what I said, one step ahead, contextual aware, helping you, guiding you, doing things for you in the background, but also in the real world, not just the digital. But if you're a student, it's just completely going to change the way learning is. You're going to be learning by doing. You're going to be coached all the time. And I think it's going to really basically scale up the human power and growth, because right now not everyone has the same access to education. Not everyone has the same access to being coached and teach and all that. That's going to like level field. I think it's just the human opportunity and the human power there is going to be just multiplied. And then if I go back to like what I said at the beginning on like getting you like super senses, we're already seeing it today. People with disabilities are already using our devices as mission critical. If you're vision impaired right now with just the glasses I'm wearing right now, and the AI is changing from like you depend on people for almost every step most of the time, or everything to be super sorted in your life, where now you can live with basically what you were saying, the real world where not everything is exactly as you put it, and you can navigate it. We're like getting examples like every day. We get someone saying like, this has changed my life. With our display glasses, we're already seeing it. People with hearing impaired, we're having a conversation, and now I'm actually giving subtitles to what you're saying here. Now imagine that like for everyone, like the superpowers that you get with regards to like, now we're having here each one of us in a different language, and it doesn't matter, it's in real time, you're just getting us basically literally with your voice, but in your own language if you don't understand that one. So you're going to get all that, and it's going to be accessible and affordable. And then I was talking like super memory. I'll give you like simple examples, but you need to compound them like every minute of your day. Right now, people do like, I don't know, like shopping list when you go to the supermarket, and then you have to remember. And people imagine, like, which is how it is today. I put a reminder in my glasses, and then I check what I needed to buy in the supermarket. It's not going to be like that. You're in the supermarket. Literally, when you're walking by the eggs on the aisle, this is going to tell you, hey, there are only 3 eggs in your fridge. You should probably pick more.
Brilliant. So it's a very exciting sort of future that you've painted there. But Rob, you've mentioned a couple of times the ethical questions that we've got. So what do you think those biggest ethical questions are? And do you see a difference in different parts of the world around how they're perceived?
So I think a lot of the conversation around AI right now is about privacy. I'm not an expert on privacy, and that is not, I mean, I kind of want to project forward into an issue that's been harder to imagine for a long time, but I think that is now coming into focus, which is this issue of being able to customize reality. Because privacy on the internet, that conversation has been rumbling on for a long time. Identity on the internet is incredibly important, and what especially young users really care about, what they use the internet for so much of the time, is being able to define and project their identity out into the world. And that the internet and social media has become this incredibly defining tool for letting people show off who they are and explore who they are and discover that sort of thing. That's fantastic. But I think as we move into a space where we can imagine lots of people walking down the street wearing glasses that can superimpose graphics into space, we can already see now demos that do AI reskinning of real places. If you want to see an example, there's an example you can sideload onto a Quest 3 called Descartes XR. It can also recognize the human body and AI reskin the human body in real time. It's not realistic looking, but you can tell exactly what it's trying to do, and it could put me into a tuxedo right now, despite whatever I chose to put on my body this morning. And so we're raising the issue now that as you walk down the street, we might move into a space where you aren't sure how other people see you, no matter what clothes you decided to put on this morning. So all this such exciting uses for XR. When I put an XR headset onto a student and I show them an application like this, this is what they pick up right away. Because if you imagine a classroom, there's so many classroom benefits to wearing glasses that could model screens. But if you're the teacher and you're standing at the front of that class and you can't tell how your students are seeing you or how they're seeing the blackboard, then suddenly we live in a slightly more fragmented version of reality at a time when I think we need to be able to get better at being able to work out what's true and what isn't. So I raise this issue of customized realities because it's a few years down the pipeline, obviously. But the minute we start giving people the ability to curate their reality, we need to start thinking about what happens when they can live within custom realities, because that has big sociocultural implications.
Yeah. And I think we're already seeing, in the real world at the moment, the challenges of fragmentation. So it's a really interesting one. So we've just got 2 minutes left. So I'll perhaps give you each 1 minute to give your view on the ethics, and then we'll come to some questions from the audience.
Sure.
What's your 1 minute take on ethics?
I think it's very important that we basically are taking care of the privacy concerns that people have. I think some of the partners that have launched, like Meta, has done a great job, right? You take a picture, a LED comes on, it tells you that you have taken a picture. But I think it's an interesting thing. This is not the first device that has a camera on it, by the way. We have these big phones in our pockets that actually have very good cameras on them. And I see a bunch of people walking around, many personal and public spaces like this with their cameras on. So people have gotten used to a lot of that in many ways. That's one. But the second thing, at least from our perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do more of the AI processing on the device. With that, what you can do is that some of that sensitive data, it just stays on your device. It never leaves you. Or it leaves, it stays around the devices that are in your control or within your home, such that it doesn't necessarily go to the cloud. I think that can also give greater confidence to people that, hey, their data is secure. It's not going anywhere beyond the realm that's under their control. So I think there are things like that that we need to do more, such that there is confidence among the consumers that this is something that they can use. But I also must say that the utility that people will derive from these devices is going to be so high that they will be willing to make certain trade-offs, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in my experience, it starts from a utility. I think if it is very useful, people will adopt it. And then the second part that will come with that is basically going to be social norms will develop around it in terms of what's the right way to use it or not. You were mentioning camera, so I always give this example, which actually dates me then. Basically, when we did the first camera phone, I worked on the second one to market. Our friends at Nokia beat us by a few months. And camera phones started to come out, and it was going to be the end of the world. They started passing laws in many countries that was like, well, you need to flash, you need to make a sound, you need to basically warn people and all that, which is somewhat important, but it's also kludge in terms of there's always ways to hide it and all that. And I bet you some of those laws are still in the books and not enforced, because what needed was basically is really our social contract to evolve to basically create the norms. What are the right ways to do it, what are the not right ways to use it. Obviously, this one is a new challenge because it's sort of more always on, but I think we need to develop that. And then also, it's important as we develop these devices, in addition to a lot of just by physics, we were talking about the challenges, a lot of that processing needs to happen locally. If you're sending a huge amount of data to the cloud, the uplink is your most expensive power thing. So this thing is never going to shrink as a result. So there is physics also that are going to take care of a lot of that thing. The other part is we need to give agency to the users. And also to the bystanders. That's what we're doing with indicators and all that, where it helps create that social contract where you know what your device is doing also, and the people around you also know what your device is doing.
Well, I'm sure we could do a whole other session on this topic, and I imagine there probably are some elsewhere in the conference. But let's give maybe one question from the audience. Who's got a burning question for the panel? Okay,
Real quick question. So with the advent of AI, we're going to have a lot of folks looking for new jobs, transitioning from being a stenographer to a new profession. Please provide your perspective on how this type of technology you're working with will help humanity get educated in new ways.
Great question. Who wants to start with that one?
I can start. I think this is not the first transition that we are seeing from a technology perspective. We have had many transitions in the past as well. And what's been very clear in those transitions is that humans are very well differentiated in the abilities that they have. They can do certain tasks that machines cannot. And in every other transition, basically what has happened is that humans have gotten to do things that are more suited to their kind of intelligence. And this is the transition that I'm sure happened when tractors were invented, perhaps, or when the machines came on the first time. and humans continue to do very interesting work. And I think this will be the case here too. That there will be some transition, I suppose, in the short term that's going to be somewhat challenging. But I think in the long term, humans will find things that are more interesting and better suited to their kind of intelligence.
Brilliant. Anybody else have a question? Question here at the back?
Hello, I saw on the show here also contact lenses as a new human interface. How do you look about that? And nobody knows you're wearing glasses, and nobody knows how you are seeing the world, the customized reality you're talking about. Is it a problem?
That's not going to be a problem for a while because it's just the physics are going to get in the way. I think what you can do with contact lenses, we're talking still like more on the science fiction part of it. It's not going to be in the next 10 years. You know, we've been investing a lot on display technologies. One of the teams I built at Meta, I think we're the most advanced in terms of like AR, both in VR, but also on the AR display technologies. The AR is more challenging because it's smaller form factors and the see-through. There are interesting things you could do with contact lenses, but it tends to be very small, like indicators and all that are going to have utility, maybe in some vertical applications, but in terms of like a general consuming and a general compute interface, is still a while way out there. It's just physics, you know, battery, power, compute, everything, you know. Plus, it's only even when we get there, and as I said, there's a lot of a hypothetical. That will only be just one component of the system. You still need audio, you still need input methods, and all that. I should have mentioned actually before, if you're talking about like things that feel more like science fiction, it's one of the things we've done. You were talking earlier, one important thing is sort of like what is the input modality. Obviously, these are going to be more natural input modalities for devices. We're already seeing it like with voice, with hands and interaction and all that. But our view, especially for AR, for mobility, for what comes after mobile, you know, if you're wearing glasses, if you have a UI in front of you and all that, how do you interact with it? If it's just putting your hands in front, you're using like big muscles, so that's like very tiring, you know. For some things, it's the natural thing to do. For many things, it's navigating a UX and all that. Our bet and what we have invested on is essentially neural sensing in your wrist, and then you micro gestures with your hand, which honestly, as we advance the technology, you just have to think about it and not even just do them. You can basically control the UX. And that's an example of where now you were talking about wearables and a network of wearables and all that really coming together is there. I think the contact lenses are going to be very limited in all those fashions. You're going to need all the things around. And as I said, like the resolution you can put on displays, the power and all that, it's going to take a while. So it's going to be more glasses. If you want to put augmented reality, it's going to be glasses.
So we've got less than a minute left. Anyone else want to have the sort of final word on that question?
Yeah, I think, look, context is, like Rafa said, it's where do you put the battery, I guess is the challenge, right? I think that's going to be a challenge for quite some time. But I think the trend is going to be interesting. There are some people who maybe want to wear different kinds of devices. And I think that's where people are going to innovate, and they're going to try, you know, rings. There are pendants, and there are necklaces, and there might be devices that sit on the table, perhaps, right? Even it might not be. And I think Rafa was talking about the modality and how you interact with it. It's going to be very interesting. Maybe it's eyes. You know, you just use your eyes to be able to control and determine what you want to do. So that new human-machine interface still needs to be developed for a lot of these devices. And that's where there is amazing amount of innovation to come. You know, that's one idea that people talk about. But I think there is closer form factors that people are already you know, talking about. At our launch event yesterday, we had Motorola over there that basically talked about a pendant with a camera on it. And basically, it can do all of those things. You can bring in your hands to be able to do that, to be able to, for those people who may not want to wear it, or for certain verticals, right? Because you have consumer, but you also have verticals of education and health and medicine and industrial and productivity. And these might require very different kinds of devices. And I think that's where we'll see a lot of new innovation and a lot of new experimenting that people will do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you massively to the panel. It's been a hugely exciting conversation. I am personally really excited about the potential of some of this, and perhaps I don't have too much concern about the jobs, because we've still got a lot of work to do to get this where it needs to go, with the hardware, the infrastructure, and all the exciting creative things we can do with it. So massive thank you to the panel, and thank you to the audience for listening.
Thank you.